Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom Thoughts. In this episode, I have call-ins from Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast and Spikepit, aka Colin Green of the Spikepit podcast. You can find their podcasts linked in the show notes. We'll talk some more about Muster. We're talking about Tiers of Play this time. And in Tales of the Dragon Slayers are still in their dungeon delve, but there is a surprise that awaits them on this day. So let's get to it.
Hey, Jason here, calling after episode 68. Well, not after. I paused it after the calls. You're about to talk about this muster for this week, or this episode. But as far as this back and forth with Joe from Hindsightless, yeah, I think we're all kind of, sort of on the same sheet of music. Obviously, I'm not in favor of one player telling another player what to do. I think that's just bad, and I'm not into that. So, man, I wish this was not a phone call, because I'd re-say that. If a player asks for help, there's nothing wrong with giving them advice, but one player shouldn't bully another player into taking an action. And I think we're on the same sheet of music as far as that goes. What I was saying is that some games, the player's skill of looking at the initiative chart and deciding who to attack based on the initiative chart is not a bad thing. So I think that's going to depend on the system. But if you're playing the more fantasy adventure game style, then planning your actions around your placement on the initiative chart is not a bad thing. That was my whole point. And I will mention this, and Joe might be interested in this. AD&D, you don't necessarily get to pick who you attack anyway. So I'm reading from page 70 of the DMG, who attacks whom. As with missile fire, it is generally not possible to select a specific opponent in a mass melee. If this is the case, simply use some random number generation to figure out which attacks are upon which opponents, remembering that only a certain number of attacks can usually be made upon one opponent. If characters or similar intelligent creatures are able to single out an opponent or opponents, then the concerned figures will remain locked in melee until one side is dead or opts to break off the combat. If there are unengaged opponents, they will move to melee the unengaged enemy. If the now unengaged figures desire to assist other party, they will have to proceed to the area in which their fellows are engaged, using the movement rates already expressed. So you don't necessarily get to pick who you attack anyway. So if you have two opponents in front of you, unless you're going to lock in single combat with them, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to hit the one that was already hit, because it's going to be randomly decided. So I'll just throw that out there. Okay, I'm going to list the rest of the show.
Thank you, Jason. You know, it's funny you bring up that passage of the book. I actually ran across that myself this week when I was going through the DMG I was looking more at digging through the rules on firing missile fire into a melee, or firing missile fire into a melee, and looking at how D&D handled that, and AD&D handled that, and I ran across that section ago. I said, that's pretty interesting. And I've been doing, I guess, something similar to that, rolling randomly to see who attacks whom with the creatures, just to keep things. And it's interesting that that's in the book, actual rule in the book, that you're going to roll randomly when you just have a mass of people and they're attacking each other in melee combat. So thank you for calling in for that. And yeah, I do think that depending on the game, different styles of game, it's almost a requirement to know that this person or this creature is going after you or before you, or how that phases in, especially where there's individual initiative. Of course, if you're doing side initiative, then you have one side go and the other side go, and so that planning and helping kind of takes place all in one phase, and then the other side goes in the other phase. But yeah, depending on the style of game, it's acceptable and probably even expected. But in some other styles of game, it might be, well, you know, you don't really know what's going on. It goes back to a discussion that happened many episodes ago, or many months ago, on some other podcasts, where folks talked about how to handle. Uh, do you know? Is it possible to know that a creature is going to go down, or that it went down? Can you change your target all of a sudden? But if you're locked in combat with another creature, then I think obviously you can't. Or to me, it's obvious that you can. That you can't just leave to go the other. Obviously, there are games like Fifth Edition that if you tried to leave one creature to another, you would expose yourself to an attack of opportunity. And what's the time scale? Would you see the creature go down and then be able to shift your target to something else? If you were attacking the same creature, would you be able to shift your target if your ally took them down before you got a chance to swing, or did you just lose your action for that round? So I think all of that kind of fits together in the same kind of situation. What can you do? What does it represent? Is it the 6-second combat round of 5th edition? Is it the 1-minute combat round of AD&D? That's going to affect that. And it's a good discussion to have. And there's also going to be individual preferences in there that, well, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in this time scale that you would be able to direct or coordinate as well as the players are doing. But it's a good thing to think about. It's a good topic, and you bring up some very good points. So thank you again.
Right, Phantom, just wanted to say I've been really enjoying your October coverage of A Muster. I think that was a really good choice because the author's style is quite forthright and he is not holding back with his opinions at all. And that seems to have generated quite a lot of discussion. It's nice the way you've broken it up and you've got your interjections with your opinions, and then you've got a sprinkling of call-ins reacting to maybe what you said and the text you've read. It just makes a really effective mix. So well done. Keep up the good work, and I'll catch you later.
Well, thank you for the call, Colin. Kind words indeed. I sincerely do appreciate them. And I appreciate people who have called in to have some things to say about Muster. And if there's anyone out there that's been listening or reading or following along, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because it's quite possible that I've misinterpreted something, that I'm misreading something, that there's something I've missed. And I would certainly like to hear that and hear other viewpoints as well. I think lots of different viewpoints, especially on something like this, is very useful. But I do thank you for your call in, Colin, and I appreciate what you had to say about my choice of material and how I'm going about doing it. And more to come. So hope I can continue living up to that praise you just gave me. But thank you very much for the call. So this next section of Muster on page 105 is entitled "A Campaign Matures in Tears." Campaigns in the basic or extended mold can both be started from scratch at first level, and they look fairly similar to start with. The biggest difference tends to be that an extended campaign usually involves a map of the wider game setting and several possible adventuring opportunities the players can choose from. I will discuss the particulars of how to set that up later on. For a basic game, preparing a single dungeon suffices. Basic type campaigns are naturally limited due to the subject matter vis-a-vis the simulation of D&D. Dungeon adventuring is a low-level game. It is common for campaigns to expand beyond those limits as player experience, campaign history, and character power grow beyond simple dungeoneering. D&D Developed made what to me seems like a grave doctrinal error fairly early by attempting to artificially extend dungeon play across a great level range, positing adventurers of high, even double-digit levels engaging in the looting missions on dungeons that developed little in scope from what they were at low levels. I mention this because it is not difficult to find rules texts that encourage extending the basic campaign in this way. The alternate perspective and also well attested in the game's textual history, posits that a D&D campaign will naturally evolve through a series of tiers or modes of play that involve qualitative changes in the subject matter of the game as a natural consequence of the fantasy adventure simulation model, as player characters grow into greater heroes fit for more romantic types of adventures. There are philosophies on this, but I take a constructionist view myself. Our mission as players of the game is to take its base modeling tools and apply them to discover what these further tiers of the game are like. It is as objective a course of discovery as charting the opening theory of chess has been for that game, and as much of a noble human pursuit in indulgently throwing our intellect against the cosmos. That being said, let me introduce what we know of the tiering theory of D&D at this time. And then on page 107, there is a brief chart entitled Tiering Theory. Along one side, there's an XP meter, and then it lists along those low tier, mid tier, high tier, and divine ascension, with arrows sort of leading from one to the other, but with an additional arrow moving off the mid tier to another section entitled the domain game, which then loops back into the high tier. It lists low tier as opportunistic freebooters, loot dungeons, vulnerable mundane characters against human scale threats. Mid tier, established pulp fiction heroes travel the world and meddle in the affairs of their betters, brave incredible odds, and survive. The domain game is listed as a Game of Thrones intrigue and war waged by the romantic, important people of the great man theory of history. High tier, epic adventures in myth and fairy tale by archetypal or feverishly superheroic characters. And divine ascension, gods, immortals, cosmic superheroes. And then in the sort of main text, we go into a little more detail. Low tier, low level play or basic tier, or fantasy Vietnam or dungeoneering tier. Levels 1 to 3 up to 10,000 experience points. Is the initial picture of the game as you begin a new campaign, basic or extended in structure. The rules for low-level characters are very lethal, realistic, and traditionally wargame-like. The scenarios are nearly exclusively about dungeoneering, footloose adventurers, risking their lives to search for treasures and dangerous, mysterious, hidden corners of the world. This is the basic D&D. The narrow, dungeon-focused campaign never needs to leave this mode of activity. Basic campaigns are constrained to the basic tier, and to my knowledge, never essentially leave it. I would personally advise retiring characters at 10,000 XP at the latest, sending them off to enjoy their veritable victory over their chosen career, levels 1, 2, 3 as commonly estimated. Extended campaigns, on the other hand, organically leave the basic tier behind as character positioning. The unique situation of the individual adventurer in the game fiction grows more complex. Seems to happen in a natural campaign environment somewhere around 5,000 XP, but I've seen expert tier play with one first level characters as well as characters who show no sign of stepping up, so it's fairly flexible. Although it is not common practice yet, there's a lot of unexplored potential in the staging of lower tier scenarios and entire campaigns about concerns beyond dungeoneering: crime, gentleman thievery, gang life, detective work, war, scouting, special forces work, and even politics or love are very feasible topics for mundane, realistic adventurers to tackle. In my experience, it takes about 50 sessions of skilled play, maybe 250 hours in total for a campaign to mature to the point of leaving the low levels decisively behind. Of course, in practical play, we dip back down on occasion as fortunes and player interests dictate. It is not forbidden to enjoy scenarios on lower tiers just because you have achieved higher. Middle tier, mid-level or expert tier, or adventuring tier, or wuxia tier, levels 3 to 7 up to 100,000 experience points, is what the extended model campaign slowly turns into as players develop the campaign and characters further. At this point, the player characters are noticeably more competent and powerful than the ordinary people they're surrounded by. I often compare the field to Dumas's Three Musketeers or pulp heroes like Conan or Flash Gordon or Chinese wuxia stories. Many changes occur in the play space, including things like complex character positioning, including determining your own adventure goals instead of generic treasure hunting. Magical weapons like Fireball routinely defeat low-level dungeon combat doctrines. Adventurers undertake long expeditions overland or overseas into hard-to-reach places. Numerically, mid-levels tend to emerge around 5,000 XP and continue up to 50,000 or even 100,000 XP, perhaps up to level 8. Many gamers have historically found this tier of play their favorite in D&D, and it does represent a certain sweet spot for players desirous of a game akin to adventure fiction. We enjoy it tremendously when we get there, but it has tended to be short bursts for us, not sustained flight, as failures strike down would-be heroes and force us to start again. With growing skill, maintaining stable mid-level play grows ever easier. Again, there's no inherent reason for a campaign to ever advance beyond this stage. I would personally advise that actually starting a campaign in expert tier is difficult and prone to creative failures due to how difficult it is to fake authentic positioning out of the gate. But it's a surmountable challenge for, well, experts in the game. I believe that once you've passed through the low-level gauntlet a couple of times and pushed a living campaign to the mid-levels, such a group might also entertain the idea of starting there from scratch. So, moving beyond the text for a moment, there has been, from time to time, a lot of discussion in OSR and even, I believe, NSR circles about how high a campaign should go. What is the best group of levels for a campaign? What do people enjoy the most? And I've seen a lot of both criticism and support for the idea that low to mid tier is the sweet spot for adventuring in fantasy RPGs. That's the area that a lot of people seem to enjoy, and when they kind of move beyond that to where their characters are more capable and the challenges of those styles of play don't present any actual challenges to the characters, they will tend to retire characters and start over. Now, again, some of that could be because, again, looking at the text where he suggests 250 hours in the sort of basic levels of the campaign, that's a lot of time and a lot of campaigns, a lot of gaming groups, a lot of play maybe don't go beyond that. Maybe the group breaks up for real life reasons, or maybe the campaign bogs down, maybe someone moves away, maybe just the plot of the thread, even if it's a sandbox style campaign where the players are picking their own adventures, kind of loses momentum and rumbles to a halt. That could also be part of the reason why those low to mid tiers are played more often, because you tend to have to get through those to get to the higher tiers. And as mentioned in the book, it's harder, even sometimes for experienced gaming groups, to start at a much higher tier and go from there, because the organic growth of the characters and the organic development of the challenges that they are seeking out and the aims and the goals that they're seeking to achieve are more difficult to start immediately from scratch as opposed to building up over time. But I think this is, in everything I've seen and heard, those two levels represent probably the most played levels for whatever reason, whether it's a natural occurrence or whether it's just preference of play. And so it's interesting to hear that expressed in the book, and how he expresses in the book how each tier can serve as just the sole way of play, if that's what that particular gaming group or that particular campaign applies, and that a campaign will end when you get much beyond whatever tier it is that you prefer to end it in. And I think I'm going to end it right there. Initially, I think I was going to try to push through this whole section, and there's 3 subsections left. They're not quite as long as the previous 2 sections, but I don't want to give them a short shrift, and maybe give myself some time to ponder on some things, and some things that I've been reading in social media a little bit that I think might relate to the next couple of levels of play and get into. So I'm going to wrap this up here, and we're going to move on to the last part of the podcast here. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. On their third delve, the party returned to a previous section that they had partially explored and then secured with some spikes to all the doors they knew about, to a 40 by 30 room where they had spiked 2 doors, one of which they had discovered had led into another, from the other side, had led into another section. They went through the remaining door to the south. In a 30 by 20 room, they found several sacks sitting on the ground. Sven's trident warned them of a trapdoor in front, which they were able to bypass, and in the bags they found copper pieces. They exited through a door to the south. The hallway went east and south. The party goes south and sees a hall to the west and a door at the end of the south hall on the east wall. They followed the west hall to a one-way door back to the triangular room where they encountered the kobolds. They looped back around and then followed the east branch of that same hall. That hall branched north and continued east. The north branch ended in a dead end. They didn't find any secret doors. And the east continued into a chamber. The party was surprised when a shrieker wandered in and began shrieking. They killed it quickly, but not before a white dragon was attracted. Fortunately, it was a small, very young dragon that seemed more surprised by them than they were by it. Gus was able to dispatch it quickly. Back down the south hallway through the door they'd found, they discovered the 30 by 30 room where the dragon had been nesting, but nothing else. Having fully explored this section, they returned to the octagonal chamber where they had been attacked by the spiders. They went out the east exit and turned to the north hallway, where they had found 2 secret doors and spiked them. They proceeded through the northern door. In that 30 by 40 chamber, they came across 8 giant rats. They were able to avoid being nipped by the rats and quickly killed them all. They found gold and silver scattered throughout the debris in the room. An open exit to the east led to a 20-foot wide north-south hall. The way south, they stopped suddenly when an elevator room blocked their entry into a 40-foot diameter circular chamber. Consulting their map, they realized that the other spiked secret door they had found should bypass the elevator room. Once in the circular chamber, they discovered a roughly 20 by 20 foot parallelogram chamber with 6 shriekers. The shriekers did not attract any wandering monsters, and the room yielded gold and a talisman in iron chests. Returning to the 20-foot wide hallway, they went through an east-facing 20-foot one-way door into a 20-foot by 30-foot room. There they discovered an illusionary wall, and behind it they were accosted by a coffer corpse. There was a quick battle, and Bernie was able to finish it off. They found gold, electrum, and a magic dagger. They also found a secret door leading east to an empty room they had been in before, and a one-way door to another 20 by 30 room where they had previously met the trapped adventuring party. They then moved to the section of the dungeon where the gnomes were being quartered. They returned to the room where they encountered the giant ticks, where there were 2 secret doors on the west wall, one in the middle slightly to the south, and one in the middle slightly to the north. They unspiked the southern secret door of the 2. Going through, they entered an 80-foot by 50-foot room with the northwest corner cut off. There they encountered 14 dwarves. They have a friendly reaction, and the PCs discovered they are in a similar situation to the gnomes, having taken cover in the keep from the dragon, with many of their brethren exploring the structure. The party promises to help them, as they did with the gnomes. The party moves through the lone door to the south into a 20 by 20 foot room. There they find a large chest with electrum. Bernie had to make a poison save due to contact poison on the treasure. Another door to the south opens to a 10 by 10 foot room. Opening the door, they are confronted by a giant toad. The toad is surprised, and Bernie and Gus kill it quickly. The party returns to the room with the dwarves and finds them confronting a group of the party's soldiers. After calming everyone down, the soldiers deliver the news that there is a large, winged creature outside the keep entrance, speaking a language no one understands. The party returns to the entrance. Bursting out the doors, Edgar declares, "That's a sphinx." the party has encountered a criosphinx, a ram-headed creature likely found in wooded areas. These creatures prize wealth and usually seek to extort passerby. And that's what it's here for. It's here for extortion, essentially, to get the party to give them some wealth. It says that they speak their own tongue, that of androgynosphinxes, and can speak with animals. But they do have average intelligence, so that means they are capable of speaking one more language, and we're going to find out what that language is right now to see if the party can even communicate with this sphinx. And that is Dwarvish. So they have the Dwarvish tongue, and we do, fortunately, have 2 PCs that speak Dwarvish. So now let's do a little personality test on this thing to see what they're dealing with. We use the personality tables for non-player characters in the back of the DMG. We'll start with general tendencies. And their general tendency is hedonist. That's an interesting result. Then their personality. 2 rolls on this to determine which table. They're going to be average personality and hostile. So they are hostile personality. Their disposition will be D10. Compassionate sensitive. I'm not sure that fits with what we had. Let's give it another roll here. Morose. Morose seems more fitting. Let's check their sanity. Let's see what kind of if this creature is sane or insane. Unstable. It's an unstable criosphinx. That's not helpful at all, I'm sure. What is their nature? The first 2 entries on this chart are soft-hearted and forgiving. Those are highly unlikely. I'm going to give a +1 to this roll to see where we end up. Unforgiving. That seems about right, fitting in with some of the other rolls we've had here. Honesty. What is their honesty? Average. Average honesty. All right, let's see how this encounter goes. The party comes out the main doors to find the criosphinx munching on the corpse of a horse. As the sphinx stands up, Sir Gus indicates the others to lower their weapons slightly. The sphinx begins speaking, and Sir Gus whispers to the party, "Does anyone understand what he's saying?" Bernie and Sven indicate they do. Gus looks at Bernie and says, "See if you just get him to leave." And Bernie steps up to negotiate with the Sphinx. At this point, we're going to do a reaction roll. Now, based on the personality I rolled up for the Sphinx earlier, that has several negatives due to the personality traits it rolled, -4% for its hedonistic tendencies, -8% for its hostile personality, -4% for its morose disposition, and -2% for its unforgiving nature, plus its inherent materialism for being a criosphinx, -10%. That's a -28%. It's also listed as unstable. There is no adjustment to any of the charts listed for an unstable entity. It does list that insane or maniacal can be plus or minus 10%, and a neurotic sanity could be -1 to 6%. So what I'm going to do, since it's unstable, it could potentially be positive or negative. I don't think it would be as positive as negative as if it was insane or maniacal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a D12, and 1 through 6 will be a negative. 7 through 12 will be a positive. If I roll a 6, if I roll a 6, it'll be -6. If I roll a 1, it'll be -1. If I roll a 7, it'll be +1. If I roll a 12, it'll be +6. So let's see where in the instability it stands. An 8, that's going to be a +2%. So overall, from its personality, it's going to be minus 26% to the reaction roll. But Bernie has a plus 20%. So it's going to be overall a minus 6% to this roll. So let's see what the dice say. 82. And that will give us, with a minus 6, a 76, which is friendly immediate action. So Bernie explains that this is their headquarters. They can't allow anything or anyone to simply come in and demand wealth from them, that they're protecting this road. The Sphinx is not happy about this, but seeing the powerful nature of the party, sensing sort of the magic they have at their disposal, thanks to the magical weapons and armor they're equipped with, it agrees to leave. But given that the party is still relatively not as powerful physically and developmentally as it could be, and given how much the regular horsemen kind of gave way before the Sphinx, it's quite possible the Sphinx will be back. But they have avoided a confrontation at this point, and they have avoided having to give up any of their hard-earned wealth. During a brief rest period, Bernie expresses that he doesn't believe that the Sphinx will be coming back soon, although they feel may come back at some time. And the party decides to spend the remainder of the day continuing their delve. They return to the room where the gnomes are and proceed through the empty room south, unspiking the secret door into the Y-shaped hallway. And they take the west fork to a 20 by 30 room. The room is empty, but another group of dwarves comes in and they direct them back to their kin. Taking a door to the west, they enter a large northwest to southeast oriented room, trapezoid in shape, 60 foot on the long side, 40 feet on the other side, and 30 feet on the two ends. They spike a northeast facing door and return to the previous room and exit through a door to the north. They find a 50 foot by 20 foot oval room, and they surprise 4 berserkers and are able to take them out before they recover. A secret door to the north opens on a stairwell down. They close and spike that door. Going back to the trapezoid room, they take the northeast exit. The hall is 20 feet wide, going northeast, then narrows to 10 feet wide, switching back to going to the northwest, widening to 20 feet at a Y intersection, with one branch leading north and one branch leading northeast. The northeast branch leads to an east-west hallway. They verify that the east part of that branch leads to the other spiked secret door that they had found in the tick room. The west branch links up with the north branch of the Y in a 20 by 30 foot chamber, with a north exit and a sack in the corner. Bernie opens the sack, releasing a gas which blinds him for 3 turns. There is a talisman at the bottom of the sack, which the gas, along with the previous contact poison on the previous treasure, makes them reluctant to touch. With the day getting late, they grab the sack and return to their living area, spiking off unexplored areas as they can. The opening music of this podcast is Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thank you for listening to Phantom Thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You don't have to be part of the show. If you want to contact me and let me know, hey, this is for your eyes only, I just wanted to give you thoughts, ideas, response, and it's really for your eyes or ears only, that's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you either way. So just let me know when you contact me. Just, I don't want to be part of the show. There are lots of different ways you can contact me. You can send me an email at phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And that can be a regular email, or you can attach an audio file to it. You can use the message button on my podcast site on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/phantom thoughts. You can contact me via my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. You can contact me via SpeakPipe, at www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. You can contact me on Discord, The Pink Phantom. All this contact information is listed in the show notes of every episode. And thank you for those who call in. Thank you for those who don't call in. I appreciate you listening and hope you'll listen again next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.